What nobody tells you is how much rejection stings, even when you've learned to expect it. That night, the rain found its way into all the smallest folds of my jacket, dripping under the collar and down my back. I stood under the neon flicker of the small sign Artworks Gallery, listening to the shouts of a distant matatu, watching the water gather in the potholes beside the curb. My portfolio, wrapped in what I'd thought was a sturdy plastic sleeve, felt limp and vulnerable in my hands. I waited, shoulders hunched against the cold, for Dennis to come walking out. Whenever I thought about that night now, I could still taste the metallic tang of rain-soaked air. I hadn't wanted to come at all, really, but my cousin had insisted, and after too many texts and not enough confidence, I'd agreed. It wasn't even a proper show, Maury, a portfolio night, one of those events you find posted on a second-hand flyer at Java House, in which hopefuls parade their dreams for a skeptical audience. The gallery director, a thin woman with sharp spectacles that never looked you in the eye, had paged through my work half-heartedly. She paused on the frame of a tired hawker at Gicomba Market, hands rough, face arching between humor and exhaustion. That one I thought might give her pause, but she only sighed and handed the stack back. "Street photography is everywhere," she said absently, already flipping open her phone. "Thanks for bringing these. We'll call if anything changes." Nobody ever calls. When Dennis joined me outside, he tried to hide his expression behind a forced smile. For a while, we just watched the rain knocking sheets off the gallery windows. I imagined the faces behind that glass, warm and easy in their certainty. "You all right?" he asked eventually. "Yeah, no big deal." "Come on, Nyakabi, you knew it would be like this." He tried to sound gentle, as though delivering bad news from a safe distance. "Look, photography is great and all, but you know how mum and aunties talk. They want you to get a proper job. All these pictures." He glanced at my portfolio, now leaking water at the seam. "Is it really worth it?" I wanted to answer, but words stuck in my throat, swelling with humiliation. Maybe I should have laughed it off. Instead, I watched the streams of water run down the glass, muddling the scene outside into indistinct shapes. Later, after Dennis had coaxed me into his waiting car, I sat in silence as he drove us back across Ngong Road. Every billboard for a telco, a soft drink, brands needing slick photographers, I guessed, felt like a catalogue of everything I didn't have. When he dropped me off in South B, he hesitated before unlocking the passenger door. "You're smart, you know, even smarter than Juma, and his degree got him a job in Kisumu last year. Don't waste it taking pictures for Instagram." I nodded, thanking him, and hurried through the rain to our flat. If it had just been my cousin, maybe I could have shrugged it off. But the family economy was a rumor mill and nothing stayed private. By weekend, Mum had already heard, and her tone as she banged out chapati dough carried a sharp edge. "What will you eat with all this snapping?" she asked as she flattened circles of dough. "You think art buys you flour? People do it in other places." I rinsed rice at the sink, hiding my face, "then go to those places. Here people want to see results. Me, I should say my daughter is a camera girl in church, when others talk about their engineers." My little sister giggled, mimicking an exaggerated camera click, and my uncle, the one who always had a visitor's chair in our living room, smirked. "Don't be too hard on her, Lucy. She's got an artist's soul. Maybe next time you can picture American celebrities in the rain." Everyone laughed except me. Those laughs weren't cruel, not quite. Just the weary amusement of people who'd learned their world's limits early. I understood where they came from. Still, my chest ached with every retelling, every small dig. After weeks of debate, muttered warnings and worries about rent, I took the only office job on offer. Data entry for a logistics company behind industrial area. 10 hours a day, clicking and pasting. My creative ambition shrank between spreadsheets and soda-stained paper cups. Evenings with eyes gritty from neon glare, I'd sneak out my camera for an hour, shooting along Lunga Lunga Road, stray cats, matatus, a Boda guy napping in the sun. Nobody saw those images but me. Some nights I wondered if that was enough. I began hoarding small moments of rebellion, a photo snapped on the walk home, a submission to an online contest nobody else cared about. Sometimes I'd win a little recognition, $50 here or there, an honorable mention on a website. Sometimes I'd print out my favorites and hang them where Mum wouldn't notice. Alone in my room, I would hold the prints to the light, running my thumb across each glossy surface. I read everything I could find: stories of South African photojournalists, of Kenyan photographers covering the elections, of women freelancing on war assignments or selling prints through Instagram. But still, every argument, every family dinner circled back to stability. It's just a phase, you're getting old for games, soon you'll marry, who wants a wife always wandering at night? Nobody said it outright, but I heard it in the quiet moments, in the dismissive glances when I stepped out with my camera at odd hours. I began to photograph less, then barely at all. Sometimes, in the middle of insomnia, I'd close my eyes and replay the gallery director's words. Street photography is everywhere. I'd wanted to tell her that I saw the city differently. That you could find stories in the rust of a bicycle or the pride in a fruit seller's hands. One Friday evening, after finishing inventory audits, I passed the Dutch bakery on Arguing's Kodhek, half thinking about what I'd lost. An older man sat outside, dark skin creased with age. He balanced a wooden birdcage on his knee. I watched him, debating whether to pull my camera out. "Take my picture if you want," he said before I spoke. "Just don't ask me to smile." Afterward, he handed me his number scribbled on a scrap of bread bag. "You'll show me when it's ready, eh?" Something opened in me. That weekend, I printed the shot in black and white and brought it back. He studied it in silence. "You see people, child," he said, "that's something." Emboldened, I began approaching strangers more: a tailor at City Market, a woman selling murrah in Uhuru Gardens, a conductor with a beautiful chipped smile. Sometimes I paid them with cups of tea or hot mandazi or just a story. Every image I took, I shared. In return, they told me names and jokes and hopes. Slowly, quietly, my confidence returned. I began sharing my photos on an anonymous blog using only my initials. People commented. Someone tagged a curator from Cape Town. 6 months after that night in the rain, I got an email. A magazine in London wanted to buy 3 images for a story on Nairobi's creative spaces. They paid $500, more money than I'd seen from photography in all my life. I wore my most boring dress to the office that day, humming as the city drifted by. Nobody at work noticed. That night, in the privacy of my cramped bedroom, I spread the notes across my bed, laughing loud enough for the neighbor to bang on the wall. Of course, I didn't tell my family. The risk of hope felt too sharp, but the gigs trickled in slow at first. Then, after my profile grew more steadily, a cover for a travel magazine, fashion shoots for a startup brand in Westlands. An NGO hired me to document a health campaign in Kibra. Each check I squirreled away, saving every shilling. At the office, my performance slipped. Managers muttered I didn't care. The day I quit, I walked out with nothing but my battered camera and my dignity. That year, everything changed. I won a regional contest for emerging East African photographers, the prize 2 weeks in Berlin. I took pictures obsessively: graffiti under railway bridges, late-night trains, the way Berliners paused for each other at crosswalks. When I returned, my photos caught the attention of artists in Nairobi. Collaboration offers followed. For the first time, I paid rent for Mum in advance, with extra to buy my sister new school shoes. One evening, Mum watched me counting stacks of notes beside the fridge. "From taking pictures?" she asked skeptically. I nodded. She grunted as though grinding a stone between her teeth. In her eyes, suspicion warred with relief, as long as it's honest work. From then there was a silence, a respectful one. I was working on a photo essay about Nairobi at night when the call came. It was the same gallery as that long-ago rainy evening. The director, voice cooler than I remembered, reached out after seeing my image in a United Nations exhibition downtown. "We're curating a show about new perspectives from Kenya's streets. Would you present a solo collection?" I didn't answer at first. For a moment, rains from 100 nights ago pressed on my skin. "Yes," I said simply. Preparing for the exhibition felt like constructing my own story from scattered fragments. Nights wandering through Gicomba, perched on rooftops, squatting in alleys at sunrise. I sought the beauty in the city's weariness, the pride in survival, the laughter breaking through hardship. I chose 23 photographs: old women tending succulents in tin cans, young lovers at Uhuru Park. The splayed wings of a white ibis rising above the river road chaos. I paid for the framing myself, borrowed money to hire the hall, even designed the invites on a rattling laptop that overheated after 10 minutes. The night of the opening, Nairobi was clear and warm, traffic rolling by in confident rhythm. As I stood in the shadow of the gallery's doorway holding my guest list, my hands trembled only a little. People filed in, artists, journalists, university classmates, even strangers I'd once photographed. Laughter and greetings filled the space, washing through the white-walled rooms. Half an hour in, I spotted Dennis, my mother, my uncle, and my little sister entering awkwardly, their church shoes scuffing on concrete. Mum clutched her Sunday bag, eyes darting from one unfamiliar face to the next. "Wow, you brought everyone," I said, half laughing, half worried. Dennis shrugged, embarrassed. "We had to see." Moving through the room, I watched as my family hovered near the edges. At first, they ignored the walls, keeping to themselves. But drawn by curiosity, my sister drifted toward a photograph, a boda rider and his daughter, hair braided, slouched together on a battered Yamaha. She tugged at Mum's sleeve. "This one looks like us." Mum gave a tight-lipped smile but wandered closer. My uncle squinted at a picture of a butcher, a man he'd once bought meat from at the Gicomba market. He turned to me. "How did you?" "I just asked," I replied. Visitors pressed around, murmuring appreciation. A journalist from NTV wanted an interview. An art buyer from South Africa approached with a business card. The gallery director hovered in the background, this time with her own glass of fruit wine. Finally, I stood at the front to make my speech. I kept it short. My story didn't need embellishment. "I once came here hoping someone would see my work. Back then, I didn't have much, just a camera and a belief that the city needed to be seen from the ground. People tried to talk me out of it, sometimes with love, sometimes with laughter. Sometimes it hurt, but I kept going, not out of stubbornness, but because I knew I had stories to tell." The crowd quieted, the lights shone hot on my face. I saw Mum's eyes watching, softer now. "I made it not just for me, but for all those who have stood alone outside the dream they want to claim, doubted by those they love." I swallowed, steadying my hands. "Tonight I hope you see Nairobi, and maybe each other differently, even if it's just for a photograph's length of time." For a moment silence hummed in the air, then applause, scattered at first, grew into a wave that pulled even the skeptics into its tide. Afterward my family crowded around. My uncle clapped me on the back, gruffly proud. Dennis looked sheepish. "I see your dream now," he admitted, voice thick. "You really did it." I smiled, not triumphant, just quietly finding my own peace. Not all doubts vanish, not all wounds heal with one night. But where before there'd been only ridicule, now there was respect, and in my mother's gaze, a glimmer of pride, wary but real. As the guests thinned, Mum wandered back toward the portrait of the hawker. The image I'd shown all those years ago now hung in the finest frame under the brightest light. "You always saw things I missed," she said quietly, her weathered fingers brushing the glass. For the first time, I felt truly seen, not just as the dreamer they'd mocked, but as someone who had returned not to prove them wrong, but to bring something home, to turn pain and struggle into something lasting. Outside, the city pulsed, slick streets gleaming with every new possibility. My camera hung at my side not as armor but as a simple extension of myself. I stepped out into the Nairobi night, a warm hand pressed to my shoulder, the rain held at last by the gallery roof behind me.